Well, let's begin. Um, Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining the session on a Saturday morning. So, I know you might have had so many things to do, but you chose to join here. So, I'm grateful for that. So, thank you for taking time out for this session. So, my name is Avinash. Hope you're all doing great. Right? During certain time in my life, right, I took interest to studies, right, about nature of reality, right, and what Yeah, during certain time of my life, I took interest to studies about the nature of reality that we live in, about our creation, about our existence, and about the nature of our true self. So this inquiry led me to study various books on the nature of reality, and the answers I would find it in the Vedantic studies. So I have to admit that I did not go through any formal education on Vedantic studies. It is only through the enquiries, questions that arose in my mind, right, that I navigated to find answers for it and the truths for it. So my approach also to sharing this knowledge would also be, in a sense, like inquiry centric rather than being simple philosophy. So it will be more like an inquiry. At least I plan to do that way, right? So coming to today's introductory session. So by end of this session, my goal is to help you understand what Vedanta is and what does Vedanta contain. So what is this study about, right? So to explain this, let's begin with a small story, right? So let us assume that we have come to a children's fair. So it's also called as exhibition, right? Or mela in Hindi. So I'm sure as children we must have enjoyed the fair, right? So what do we see in that fair? So the fair is filled with fun activities for children, right? Kids totally love to play here, right? They try different fun games and are excited to be in the fair. So often the children start demanding and desiring to experience everything that is in offer in the fair, right? So there can be swings, there can be various water sports or anything of that sort. They demand, they want to experience, they desire. So all those things the children start asking, right, to their parents. They feel enjoyment when they are playing and winning certain games, and feel sad when they are losing some of them. So while playing, what happens? They often lose track of time. And when it's time to return home and called by their parents, they start to cry and insist on playing more because they don't want to give up. They want to play more. They are excited about being in the fair and the exhibition, right? So they start, uh, uh, they want to experience it more. The parents, right, while bringing children to their fair, give them certain instructions also about the fair, right? So, what kind of instructions do the parents give? So, they tell them first what is the fair about, whether it is a science fair or it is some other kind of fair where there are a lot of, there are cartoon fairs also, like character fairs also. So, things like that. So, the children first talk about, the parents first talk to the children about what kind of fair they are taking them to. After that, they will tell them how to play the games, how to stay disciplined when you are playing those games, how not to hurt yourselves and not to hurt others. So, the third thing they may say, how to call for help or get help when they want or get help when needed. So, this is the third point. So, also the parents like provide some instructions to the children about how to like approach someone or how to uh, return back to them when they feel lost, right? So often in exhibitions we find children losing track of their parents, right? So the parents also give them certain instructions into what you say how to return back to them, right? So though with these clear instructions from the parents, at certain times what happens, the kid gets lost in the fair. Why? Because to the magnificent attraction of the fair, the kids are so much lost that they even forget that they had come here with their parents and with clear instructions on how to return. But due to their attachment to the what you said, with all those fairs and all those games, right? So they forget what were the instructions from their parents as well, right? Now, this is some short story, you can say, short analogy that I trying to use to help us understand few things, right? Let's use the above story as an analogy to understand Vedanta. So let's begin with. So let's compare this fair or the exhibition with creation itself, right? So what did we talk about the fair? So we told that the fair is filled with all sorts of fun activities for children. So similarly, our creation is also filled with so many magnificent things. We are excited and allured by the fascinating reality. Like children from the fair, we like to experience everything that is on offer and more. We run behind fulfilling our desires one after the other, never stopping in this playground of ours called as creation. So that is about the fair. That is about the fair when we compared with creation. Now, what are parents here? So let's compare the parents to something we call as the Paramatma or the God, right? So let's compare the parents. I think someone has to go on mute. So I was talking about the fair and like it contains so many of the fun activities, and similarly I was comparing the fair to our creation. So our creation is also filled with so many magnificent things. Like we are excited and allured by the fascinating reality. Like children from the fair, we like to experience everything that is on offer and more. So we run behind fulfilling our desires one after the other and never stopping in this playground of ours called as creation. So this is what when we compare our fair to the creation. Now who are the parents? Let's compare the parents with something called as Paramatma or the God, right? And the children, let's compare us to the human beings. So in that case, what happens? Like the parents instructing the children about the fair, right? Before taking them to the fair, here the Paramatma also instructs the humankind about the creation. Now, what are these instructions? So these instructions are similar to what parents give their children when they are trying to bring them to the fair. So first they tell what is the fair about. Similarly, the Lord or the Paramatma will talk about the creation and the sciences that are associated with that creation, like the knowledge about astronomy, astrology, medicine, warfare, economics, right? So the Paramatma will instruct like the human beings before he takes them to the fair called as the creation, and he gives information about the creation. And second thing, what does he do? So he, like the parents tell children how to play the games in the fair without getting hurt, right? Similarly, the Paramatma gives instructions on how to live in this creation, and these instructions are known as dharma or karma, right? So one should live in this creation by practicing one's dharma and karma. So all that knowledge also Paramatma he gives to human beings. Now what other thing the parents tell the children? How to call for help or how to get help when needed, right? So similarly, the Lord also provides instructions containing information on worshipping of various deities, the prayers, about the prayers, the yagnas, the mantras, the rituals, the sacrifices, and the ceremonies. So, because performing these, we can get blessings from the deities. So, similarly, how we instruct children on calling out for their parents during the fair. Similarly, Lord also instructs all this information about invoking the deities, right? So to seek help from them. And the last part that we saw is the parents also give instructions to children on returning to home, right? So similarly, the Lord also gives some knowledge for returning back from the fair. In our case, it is our creation, right? So the Lord also gives some instructions on how to return back from these creations. You understand that, right? So since fair is compared to the creation, hence returning from fair signifies returning from the creation. And returning from creation, but going where? right? As children, on returning from the fair, we go back to the parents. That is very clear. But Paramatma has provided some information to humankind on returning back to him after we complete our play in the creation. So similarly, how children come back to their parents after the end of the fair, on the same basis, Paramatma also has given some instructions on returning back to home. That is returning back to him. That is, we return back to Paramatma itself after our, what you say, the play in the creation is completed, right? So I have taken this analogy to help us understand what kind of instructions do parents give the children when they are taking to the fair. Using that analogy I have just used on the creation. So what kind of instructions the Paramatma has given to us all human beings when he is taking us into this creation, right? So understand this. These instructions that we just talked about, right, is given by Paramatma to human beings. So these instructions itself is called as the Vedas here. So now you have to get the point. So you are coming into the creation, right? So similarly, how parents are getting their children into the fair, the Lord has talked about what the creation is. The Lord has talked about how to get help in this creation. The Lord has talked about how to perform or how to live in this world whereby you don't hurt yourself and you don't hurt others. And lastly, the Paramatma has also provided certain instructions from where, after you are done with your play, you can return back to him. You can return back to the Paramatma, right? So these things, when we understand, we know what are Vedas, right? Now, what do Vedas contain in that way? If you see, it contains Paramatma's instructions about the creation, about the dharma, about the karma, about worshipping of the deities, and about returning back to the Paramatma. Right? Now understand these. These specific instructions that deal with returning back to Paramatma, right, are called as Upanishads. Right? So there are various other information that the Lord has given. Of those informations, when you only take the instructions on returning back to Paramatma, so those instructions are called as the Upanishads. So what we can understand here is that Upanishads are part of Vedas which deal with certain knowledge to reach to Paramatman, right? So this knowledge to reach Paramatman contains essentially knowledge about our existence, the nature of reality that we are living in, and the knowledge about the self, like who we are. So understanding about the nature of reality and about ourself, we can reach Paramatman. So the Upanishads contain such information. Now there is one other thing that we need to understand here. These Upanishads that is just a part of the so many things that Lord has talked about. These Upanishads are found at the end sections of the Vedas, right? So there are so many instructions that the Lord or the Paramatman has talked about. He has talked about the creation. He has talked how to live in this creation. Like he has talked about how to get help from this creation, and certain end sections only he has talked about how do you come back, how do you come back to the Paramatma. So these Upanishads hence are found at the end sections of the Vedas, right? So we understood what are Vedas, right? We understood what are Upanishads, but what is Vedanta then, right? So Vedas we understood Upanishads. So Vedanta, you have to understand that Upanishads itself is called as Vedanta, right? So the end instructions of the Lord on returning back to Him, the Paramatman, it itself is called as Vedanta. So it is called as Upanishads. The other name is Vedanta. Now, why do they call it as Vedanta? Because Upanishads are essentially found at the end of the Vedas, right? So Veda Anta. So it means that of so many things that the Lord has talked about, certain things at the end He has given information on how to reach back to Him, which is found at the end of the Vedas. That is why the name Vedanta. It means at the end of the Vedas, you will find instructions called Upanishads, which deal with knowledge and information on how to return back, and that's why it's called as Vedanta. Now, to summarize this, Vedanta is study of Upanishads, which are found in sections of the Vedas containing spiritual knowledge about the creation, nature of reality, and the self. So, as I said earlier, so my goal for this session was only to help you understand what is Vedas, right? And what do these Vedas contain. So I hope that you are clear in both these things, right? I have few things for your introspection or for your, you can say, kind of meditation. So you have to introspect. So I have one introspection activity, you can say. So why do we have to think about this? So why do we have such instructions on returning back from creation by Paramatma? Why is it needed? So I want you to introspect on that. So same thing if you compare with the fair, right? You know the answer, right? So you know for the fair, you know the answer. Like the children, they are playing in the fair. After the fair is done, it makes them sense that they return back to their parents, right? Because parents are the one who is taking care of them. Parents are the one who has brought them to the fair. Now my activity that to you is an introspection into why the Lord has given Vedanta to us, why the Lord has given such instructions on returning back from creation to Himself, I mean to Paramatma itself. So why we have such information? In other words, why does Vedanta exist and you know that it is a path to return back to Paramatma, but I want you to just introspect why the Lord has given such information. Why can't He just say that, okay, you are in this creation, you can enjoy it so however long you want. So that is one. So I want you to introspect on this. The other thing is certain, you can say as an assignment or a small activity, right? I have explained to you what Vedas are. I have explained to you what Vedas contain, right? But I did not give any understanding about how many Vedas are there, right? And I have not named any Vedas. So this is a simple activity. So if a Google search, if you do, you will come to know how many Vedas are there and what are they. So why I am giving this activity is just to keep ourselves engaged. It's not like only I am giving all the information and we are just listening, right? So some engagement for this purpose. So try to find what are the Vedas and try to name them, right? Also look for what are the subdivisions of Vedas, right? And try to name them. So one subdivision of Vedas is Upanishads, right? That we already talked about. Why I am telling that as a subdivision? Because you already know that Vedas contain so many other information also. So one part of the information is to return back to home, in other words, to return back to Paramatma, which is called as Upanishads. But there are other subdivisions to Vedas also. So try to name those subdivisions. Try to find those, what are those subdivisions, right? Now, the other assignment or an introspection, you can say, is to think how did Paramatma shade the Vedas, right? So, you know, like the parents are sharing the information to their children, how they talk to them and they tell them. But just introspect or just take this as an assignment and just think how Paramatma has shared the Vedas. So did he compile this? Did he write down in one book and did he give it to everyone to study that? So did he do that way? If at all you think that okay, Lord has written Vedas, the Paramatma has written the Vedas, if you think, then try to find when did he wrote that book, right? So obviously he should have written sometime, but when? So you might say that just before creation he might have written those Vedas, right? So try to find out this information. So in this group I will be just be, so that we don't lose track of this whatever questions I asked, right? So I will also post these questions in the group. Try to find out what are the answers for this, okay? And also I will be sharing some feedback links. See, this is my first session. I try to keep it simple and short, so there will be one feedback form also. It will be an anonymous form, so if you feel like to give any feedback, you can give there as well, okay? So again, I would like to end this session. I hope you understood what Vedas are and what it contains. So we have another few minutes. If you have any questions on what we talked about, so you can ask. Yes. So if there are no questions, then uh, thank you again for joining this session, and I will be posting those questions. So please try to engage in this activity, so that in the next section when we take up, we will try to discuss about few other questions that we have, and maybe try to get answers for them. Hope this session was useful. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Avinash. Thank you so much for the wonderful session. Thank you.